1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Reactions. Not just any episode, episode 53 of Star Wars Reactions. And we got a full show for you today. We are going to have some fun. We got a new segment we're going to talk about this week. We got a new psychology corner, and we are breaking down the latest news and, of course, the latest episode of The Bad Batch, Infested. And it was an infested episode for sure. So let's get things started without a doubt. My name is Aaron Harris. I am one of your hosts here. And joining me is the only thing that just popped into my head is the Dorothy to my Toto, because I'm looking at a picture that my kid just sent me of the Wizard of Oz. I don't know what. Geez, wrong timing. But we'll go with it. David Motters, David brother, how you doing?
Good, buddy. They didn't quite break the record for the quickest Carabas moment, but it's close.
It's close.
No, it's always fun to be here to record with you. I'm ready to react, and like you mentioned, I've got more in the psychology corner and a brand new one to give to people. And I'm excited to share that with them and talk Star Wars with you.
Perfect. Yep, it's going to be a great show. First off, how's everything going on your end, David?
Well, pretty good. I know we just went away for the weekend. You know that. I talked to you. We had a much easier weekend than what you had, but everyone's strong and healthy here. And how are you on your end, bud?
Well, we're doing okay. We're all a little tired. Now we had that whirlwind trip to Indiana this weekend for what ended up being a double funeral for my grandmother, and then for her brother as well, who passed away, unfortunately. So it was great seeing family, but could always been under better circumstances. But it was a good trip, getting to see everybody. But all things considered, it was pretty sad. And for those of y'all that reached out and sent their sympathies and thoughts and prayers, we appreciate that, and thank you so much. They were greatly appreciated from everybody on this end of the mic. So, but now that downer note's out of the way, let's get into the news and get this show going, because we got some good stuff for you tonight, and it's going to be great. And instead of the news segment, I'm going to call this just Take My Money, Honey segment, because everything in here is going to steal my money away and probably leave me single and divorced. First up, San Diego Comic-Con at home panel occurred for Lucasfilm Publishing this week. And the third wave, the first phase of Wave 3 of the High Republic, has been announced, with release dates starting in January of 2022.
Yeah.
And we're looking at 3 books that have been announced, as well as some comics. We have adult novel number 3 will be written by Claudia Gray. It will be called The Fallen Star. Young adult novel number 3 will be written by Daniel Jose Older. Will be titled Midnight Horizon. And the middle grade book number 3 will be written by Justina Ireland, titled Mission to Disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Then what I'm also looking forward to is Charles Soule will be penning a 2 30-page issue comics called The Eye of the Storm, which will tell the backstory of Marquion Rowe.
Mm.
So that is going to be awesome to see. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
That's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, there's a lot more coming out here very, very soon. So be on the lookout for that very soon. Actually, is that today? Yeah, the day we're recording this, Out of the Shadows by Justine Ireland was released.
Yeah.
That was today, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got it on Audible. I ordered it today.
Track of my days already.
Yeah. Well, well, in essence, that's the third of 3 books right now, right? They had that original set last January, an adult, young adult, and middle grade novel. That again here. And then, of course, in January, it's kind of the same thing. Plus the ongoing comics, the High Republic and High Republic Adventures. So I've been having a lot of fun with these. I have kept up with everything. And you and I have even kept up with the short stories in Star Wars Insider.
Yes, that's been awesome to see. Those have been really good. So this whole the High Republic storyline is actually doing really well. It's been pretty popular. So it's nice to see that they're continuing to run with it. I'm curious though how long they will keep this. I know the plan that when they announced it was this will strictly be a publishing initiative, but at what point do they branch out of publishing and go into a show or a movie or something, especially as popular as it's been. So.
It has been very popular. I know that the initial talk is that the Acolyte, which was announced back in December with all of those other shows, was considered maybe the High Republic ending at around that point in the Acolyte, that live action TV show, or that it has some connection to the High Republic.
Yeah.
So that would be one. But you make a good point. Would they do something else as well? It's been, like you said, very popular, very well received. And I'm telling you, I've really enjoyed the different books and the comics and the short stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have too. They've been really good, and we'll see where the story leads. I'm excited to see it. So let's see what happens. So the part 2 of the Take My Money, Honey announcements in the news today comes from Hasbro. Hasbro just made a whole bunch of announcements for figure releases for the Black Series and the Vintage Collection. The first 2 figures they announced are part of their carbonized Black Series 6-inch collection. All 3 figures, are from The Mandalorian. We have the Scout Trooper, which of course we saw in season 1. We have the Shore Trooper from The Mandalorian. And then ultimately we have probably the one that will get the most attention, Paz Vizsla, the heavy armored Mandalorian that we saw there in season 1. So those are coming out in spring of 2022. Those were announced. Pretty good looking figures. But the ones that caught my attention were based on they made a series of announcements, and these caught me off guard. I was not expecting this, but the micro series, the Clone Wars micro series that came out there around episode 3, Tartakovsky's micro series. they got a series of figures, 6-inch and 3 3/4 inch coming out for that, and to celebrate Lucasfilm's 50th birthday. The 6-inch line will include the Black Series Arc Trooper. Then there will be a 6-inch Mace Windu and a 6-inch General Grievous. Those are all from the Micro Series. Those figures, pictures for those figures haven't been released, so they just got snapshots of the characters from the actual Micro Series in there. So it'll be interesting to see the final details on those. But what they do have are the pictures of the 3 3/4 inch vintage collection from the Micro Series as well. They're actually releasing more Micro Series, more vintage than they are Black Series this time. I was surprised. They have Ayla Sakura and Luminara Undali, Barris Offee. Then they have the Arc Trooper Captain and the Arc Trooper, and then a battle droid. And of course, all these coming out spring 2022 as well. I'm pretty surprised they're releasing from the Micro Series. I'm happy. I'm excited to see them. I may have to try to snag those Arc Troopers, but they look great. Have you seen these yet, David?
No, I do listen to every Tuesday morning I listen to Dan's top 5 moments from each episode of the Bad Batch episode. And so in his little news segment, he was mentioning these, and I was like, that's really cool. And I, in terms of the Micro Series, back in the day, I looked at those, I have those. I bought them on CD, not CD, DVD. And then when they dropped them in, what was it been, this past April, I watched it again, the Micro Series. I love that Micro Series. It is so good. I love that, stylized view that they do for Grievous. And like as soon as you said it, I can visualize Mace Windu destroying all those super battle droids. Yep. And then the Arc Troopers. So I'm with you, like you mentioned a couple minutes ago. I'm really curious to see the kind of the final details on these, and that's really cool that they're doing that and giving that Micro Series some love.
Yes, absolutely, it is. I dropped the link so you can see the pictures in the Skype chat, right. So you can pull that up and look at it if you want. Because you could see the 3 3/4 inch ones, and you could see the carbonized Black Series, but they, like I said, they don't have the 6-inch Clone Wars pictures yet, just the snapshots from the actual show. Okay. But yeah, those are going to be great, and I got a feeling like all the other vintage collection stuff, impossible to find.
Okay.
So we will see what happens and go from there, because definitely a couple in there I wouldn't mind getting my hands on, that's for sure.
Yeah, I see what you I see what you sent here. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, there it is in the animated ones. Yeah, when they're Mace, the Arc Trooper, and then that Grievous shot right there. That's inside of that down Star Destroyer. Yep. Thank you for sending it. Very cool to see this. Yeah. I love those Arc Troopers, the blue and the red.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful, awesome pieces. Yeah. So you definitely can check that out. And of course, I definitely want to get my hands on like I said, those Arc Troopers.
Yeah.
And see what I can do.
Yeah. So, that'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So I'm actually sending you another link for the last item here. So the final thing that was announced that is really the coup de grace of take my money is Gentle Giant announced a new Star Wars Rebels bust. This one is actually Darth Vader, and it's actually Vader from Twilight of the Apprentice.
Yes.
And what's incredible about this piece is it's got the interchangeable head on it. So you can pull the head off and either have it with the full solid intact Darth Vader mask, or you can have the battle damage mask where it actually exposes part of Anakin's face, the eye and the scar and everything. When Ahsoka is when you at that scene in the episode where you actually hear Matt Lanter call out Ahsoka. Chilling. But this piece is scheduled to come out in December, limited to 3,000 pieces, and it is $125, and it is on pre-order now.
Oh my! You and I are Rebels fanatics.
Yeah. I already have Kanan on pre-order. I already have Thrawn on pre-order. I'm still kicking around Captain Rex, but now they threw this into the mix, and now I'm just like, I'm screwed.
Well, like when you mentioned divorced and single and all your money's gone. Yeah, that would be that's about right. There's been so much stuff coming out that, I think it was last week when we recorded, the week before, we were talking about the HasLab stuff, and I was thinking of Jabba's sail barge and then the Razor Crest, and I'm like, I would love to have both of those, but I don't have the space, buddy. I'm being honest,
Oh, I understand.
I just don't have that spacing, and but oh my gosh, it'd be so cool to have those, and then financially too,
Oh yeah. Absolutely. It's crazy because it's just, I got, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is just so detailed and so awesome. And, these busts are what's going to get me in trouble, because these are the ones out of it. They could throw out as much stuff, as many figures and stuff that they want that are good. I'm going, cool. That's great. If I like one, I may get one. But you throw a Rebels thing out there and it's like on like Donkey Kong. I mean, it's the dark side has cookies and I want the cookies. So
well, it's all what somebody's jam is, what is it that they like, and that's been your thing, and for other people it's something else, and it's there's so many different things to collect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I still haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. And if I wouldn't have had to spend all the money to go to Indiana, I probably would have already. But so we'll see what happens coming up. But yeah, that's all available on pre-order. So make sure, if you are interested, grab it now while you can, because who knows if it will still be available. So c'est la vie. So with that pretty much wraps up all the news. Official news, I should say. There's a lot of rumors going around right now, which we don't talk about rumors, so I'm not even going to get into those. So just take everything you read online with a grain of salt if it's a rumor. So that's all I'll say there. So let's get going on our review of The Bad Batch. The latest episode was called Infested. This episode was released on Friday, July 23rd, 2021. Written by Amanda Rose Munoz and directed by Saul Ruiz. This episode takes place there. After returning from a mission for Sid, Clone Force 99 discovers Sid establishment has been taken over by Roland Durand, who is trying to get in good with the Pike Syndicate. Sid forces Clone Force 99 to help her take her place back by sneaking in and stealing a shipment of spice Durand has for the Pikes. Things turn hairy when the Pikes show up and end up holding Omega until their spice is returned. Sid helps the crew recover the spice, and the Pikes leave after taking one of Roland's horns. Then Roland leaves as well, and Sid celebrates with Clone Force 99. And that is your brief but effective synopsis of Infested. So, David, let's get into our initial reactions here. I'll go first on this one. Coming off of the episodes that we just had, the high intensity Hera episodes, Chopper was in those episodes. I am not surprised, and it shouldn't have surprised me, that they slowed things down. They've always had a history of, after big, massive episodes that get your energy and blood flowing, they always slow things down with some kind of random story or arc. And it just doesn't, this was it. This episode was definitely that. I mean, overall, it was a decent episode. I thought, it was fun to see Sid finally get her hands dirty with the Bad Batch. Very little story. I thought I wasn't fond of the lack of movement in the story overall. Overall, honestly, it felt like a cheapened version of Ocean's 11 to me. But I mean, it did have its high points. What little growth we did see, we saw in Sid, which was good. There's a nice nod to Indiana Jones, which was awesome. The Pikes were in it, so that was pretty cool. But overall, I felt it was a pretty weak showing after what we had. So those are my opening thoughts. David, how about you, brother? What did you think of? What were your initial reactions to Infested?
Yeah, very similar to yours. I watched it for the first time, I think on Saturday, and my response was MEH, meh. And as Aaron said, there's really almost no development of our characters, particularly Clone Force 99 or Omega. Like you said, a little bit with Sid, but overall, no forward movement of the overall story. I've been thinking about, I was hoping to see in this kind of a return to Camino, maybe showing a little scene here or there, showing what Lama Su's up to regarding Omega. What are they going to do with cloning, and basically, trying to keep their contract with the Empire. We know, you and I have said this in previous episodes, that IMDb has listed the titles, and they've been correct the last 3 weeks. The one next week is called War Mantle, so I'm guessing that will be correct. It's been mentioned before earlier in the series, so I get a sense maybe that's when they're going to go to it. I wanted them to get to it this episode, and then in the 3 that we have left. But there was none of that. And overall, there was basically entertainment value, not much here. I watched it, quite honestly, a second time to help me with my psychology corner, and I'll go over that in a wee bit. But if not for that, I honestly would not have watched this episode again. I usually watch the episodes 2-3 times before Aaron and I record, just so I have it in my head, and I just have it, and because I enjoy them. But I won't be coming back to this one anytime soon.
I don't think a lot of people will, unfortunately. It is one of those It's definitely turned into one of those episodes that are a lot of people are calling a filler. And I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. There aren't fillers in Star Wars. Everything comes around to a level of importance, either in an episode or two, in a season or two, or even maybe not even in the series, in something completely else. So there definitely could be more to the story as time goes on. But this definitely was a struggled episode when it comes to the story. Now, like I said, and you said it too, David, it had its high moments. It had its good things.
Mm-hmm.
Everything does, and we're going to focus on those good things.
That's right.
With the review, we did, and one of those things that I was happy to see was the return to the Pike Syndicate. I thought that was great. I mean, we've seen them in the Clone Wars. We've seen them in the comic books. They were in Solo. Now we've seen them in the Bad Batch. So they're very much incorporated throughout the majority of Star Wars now, and taking its place as a crime syndicate, which is something I was not really expecting per se. You always heard about everything when you think about crime syndicates. You always thought about the Hutts, primarily. Those were your major crime syndicate. That was your major crime syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got some others that popped up, Black Sun and the Pikes, and then Crimson Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
But they all, based on what we've seen, they all pretty much paled in comparison of the Hutts, from my understanding. But they're obviously getting themselves around quite well. How'd you feel about seeing the Pikes again?
Yeah, I like these guys. I was, at StarWars.com, in the episode guide, periodically they'll give you a link to videos over at Star Wars Kids. And I've watched it several times this year, because they give real nice summaries of what's going on in certain aspects of the episode that was shown. And this one was on the Pikes, and it was fun to click on that and see the Pikes and all those different manifestations that you mentioned, in terms of being in Solo, being in the comics, being in the Clone Wars. I enjoyed Stephen Stanton as one of them, last year in the final 12 episodes. We saw them in the Martez sisters arc, right? Those 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And Aaron, the design of his particular character was really cool. And then you see how they have kind of they can have different looks, but overall that they're all Pikes. And I like how they sound. And I like these guys as bad guys, and really mafioso kind of like thugs, dealing drugs. So I when you were mentioning the Solo one, I can just see Kira killing that one with one of her moves, taking keys and going from there. Yeah. So very much enjoyed seeing them.
Yeah, it was great to see them. Personally, I thought, and what's great too is we got to see. It wasn't just it was a Pike and a group of their enforcers who had taken over the bar, and those are I don't remember seeing these enforcers before. Even when we saw them in Clone Wars, these almost like armored, almost like stormtroopers, but it's a different kind of armor, a lot darker, full helmet. It was fun to see these guys in the episode.
Well, they were working for Roland, right? Not for the Pikes.
Correct, but they were Pike enforcers.
Oh.
They were Pike, according to the episode guide. Those guys were Pike enforcers. So apparently Roland was put in charge of some Pike enforcers who were guarding the spice, and they were working for him, but they ultimately all worked for the Pikes.
So why did they get killed by the 3 main Pikes?
Because they were naughty and they lost their spice.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Okay.
Failure is not an option.
Not with the Pikes, right?
Not with the Pikes. I even think Maul said something along those lines when he was starting Crimson Dawn. There in the end of Clone Wars.
Right.
So, it's definitely something that was not welcomed. That type of failure, something that was not welcomed. So,
okay. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. So, all right. So we got more to talk about. We're going to keep talking about Infested. Before we do, though, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more on Infested, David's Psychology Corner, and an all-new segment to Star Wars Reactions. Curious what it is? I know what it is. You're going to have to come back to find out. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We're talking the Bad Batch. We're talking Infested. And this episode definitely infested our minds. So we just had a great discussion. That made no sense, did it? We just talked about the Pikes. And I want to talk about Roland Durand because he was an interesting character. And I kind of liked him in an odd sort of way. He had an air of confidence about him that it was very prideful. And this what I liked about him in the story, we got to see it in action. Pride goeth before a fall, and boy did he fall. He was I thought he was a great character. He's a Deveronian character too, which was awesome. We don't see a lot of them in very much, but especially in the forefront talking and actually in a lead role. They're usually backgrounds. So it's fun to see him. What did you think of Roland Durand, Dave?
Yeah, he was interesting. In fact, last week, kind of back up a minute. Last week when I finished my Psychology Corner, I had mentioned to our listeners that, I was trying to decide if I wanted to continue on with some of the pivots, and I just needed to wait and see what the episode shared. And one of the redeeming qualities was for me was that Roland Durand provided the opportunity for me to cover another pivot. And so I'm going to talk about Roland Durand more in my Psychology Corner, and just how people can change, how they develop a sense of self and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But I did really enjoy this character, and I've heard people talk a bit about thinking that he was maybe a younger Vizago, right, that we see in Rebels.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I didn't think of. I mean, I thought of Deveronian, and I thought he looked kind of similar, but I didn't think it was him, just because of the character models looked really different. But like you said, we don't see a lot of Deveronians. But I enjoyed his character and how, he did change. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that in my Psychology Corner.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, he is very interesting and very prideful, very, very interesting character to follow. And I love how he made the statement there at the beginning of the episode when Clone Force 99 barges into his office and questioning where Sid is and everything. And he's like, this parlor, and he just doesn't leave it there. He goes, this parlor and Ord Mantell are now my territory. He's like, this is all mine. Everything you see, everything you touch, it's all mine. And he's just very confident and very prideful in that. So I liked it. I thought he was a decent character. and had a lot of interesting clout to him. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is actually Sid. Sid actually surprised me in this episode. Not for the fact that she, blackmailed Clone Force 99 into, saving her establishment and her parlor. But she got her hands dirty with them. She helped them with the plan. She helped them break in. It was all her plan, and she went with them. She was involved from beginning to end, and it was kind of refreshing to see her do something other than make their lives miserable, per se. So I thought we definitely saw some growth in her too, especially when the Pikes captured them and basically said, "You'll return our spice and won't kill your kid," referring to Omega. We'll hold your kid till you bring back our spice. And we actually see Sid actually has more of a connection to Omega in this than we actually anticipated after the episode where they were doing the Jarek scam. And she's like, I got the kid into this, I'll get her out, and puts her best foot forward in it. What did you think of Sid in this episode, David?
Yeah, it was, I have to admit, I had to think about it several times, like when she basically, because yeah, I'm making a lot of sense here. I have 50 different thoughts in my head. Okay, let me speak. I can speak. Really, I can. Yeah. First things first. We know that the Clone Force 99, that their debt is paid off to Sid. Mm-hmm. They don't have to pay her anymore because of that Jarek kind of hustle that her and Omega were doing. So when she blackmails them, I'm kind of like, okay, you're leaning towards, being kind of what I kind of thought you were. Like, you're not trustworthy, and you'll hand the Bad Batch and Omega over for money. But then later on, when she wants to rescue Omega, here she is tilting towards a more positive stance and a more helpful stance. So again, she walks that line, right? It was kind of both in this episode. And now, admittedly, several episodes ago, kind of when we first met her, you and I had talked about, what's her angle and can they really trust her or not? It does keep you interested and on the edge of your seat versus knowing, oh, we know what she's all about. So they have been throwing these little things out. I would still say after this, I guess after watching this, I think she's leaning more towards a positive kind of, what would we say, light side versus dark side, feeling like she's a little bit more of a positive person overall, a caring person than just a negative, I'm only out for myself kind of person. So advanced her, some. I do, like you said, Aaron, like to see her have a little skin in the game. And it was actually herself, in the mine cars, possibly getting shot. Yeah, it was good to see her getting involved.
It really was. It was fun to see her get involved, and see her committed to something besides running them ragged on these missions to make money and make credits. And they were actually out there fighting for her, and she was out there fighting for herself too, which was awesome. So looking at one of the great other, like I said, we're hitting all the good things we liked about this episode. The nice little nod to Indiana Jones in this episode, I thought was great. It was probably my favorite part of the episode, really, was seeing that little nod. And I'm referring to, of course, the rail cars in the cave, the chase there, Roland Durand's men are chasing them after the spice as they're rolling through these mine cars in the Ord Mantell underground, which I thought was cool. There's definitely a nod back to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when they're riding the mine cars trying to escape from the bad guys there. Great thing, and this was something you added into the notes. I had thought about it, but I didn't even have a chance to write it down, or didn't even think about writing it down. So good catch there. And it's great, especially in a year where they're celebrating Lucasfilm's 50th anniversary, to have this type of nod in there. Of course, Jones a part of the Lucasfilm world. What did you think of this whole rail car chase thing that they did?
Yeah, it's an homage. It's a real nod to those movies. And we know we're in the 40th anniversary last month in June of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Indiana Jones. And like you said, it is the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm. And so an appropriate time to give a nod to it. That's the first thing I thought about the first time watching it, even though I was kind of like, I did like seeing that. I liked that Sid had to tell them, look, we can't turn the engines on because of the Earlings, the infestation within the cave. And so it makes it even more difficult. They have to be quiet. Can't turn the rail cars on, their engines anyways, but then ultimately have to because they're being chased. So of course it ups the ante and makes it more exciting and stuff. I will say this, that, I mentioned, I think this to you earlier, that, I always listen to Dan Z on Coffee with Kenobi Live. It's always recorded Monday night. I listen Tuesday morning. I give credit to everybody that was on the call yesterday, and they had mentioned Temple of Doom. They'd mentioned some Lord of the Rings homages. I didn't really pick those up. I just haven't watched those movies a whole lot. But they mentioned something, and this is going back to what you said, Aaron, about Roland Durand, had a very James Bond feel with Ruby, meaning I was like, wait,
Blofeld.
Yes.
Yes.
Blofeld,
now that you say that,
right?
I see that.
Right, holding it, petting the animal like Blofeld did. Here's Roland Durand, petting Ruby. And so someone mentioned that. I was trying to remember who, when Dan said, oh, that was a good catch on their part. So Indiana Jones homages, Lord of the Rings, and even James Bond. So I want to make sure I mention those, but I'm not taking credit for that. I give that to everybody in the CWK live chat last night.
Okay. Yeah, Blofeld. Now that you say that, yeah, I can see that Blofeld. The Lord of the Rings, though, man, that's the one that's got me. I'm replaying the episode in my head, trying to figure out.
I think someone mentioned, Aaron, like dropping something down in the cave, and well, it might have been.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if it's Lord of the Rings or Hobbit when.
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings. Yes.
Drops.
And Fellowship of the Ring when.
Yeah.
Pippin knocks. Was it Pippin or Merry? Knocks over the skeleton in the suit of armor down a well and summons all the orcs. Okay.
I think that's what. Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see that. My mind obviously did not go there when I first saw it.
Right.
But yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Well, and that's what, listening to that CWK this morning, it kind of thinking about those homages really kind of helped me enjoy the episode more, because I didn't really enjoy it overall. So the homages, I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Absolutely. I can definitely agree with that. So there we go. Any other topics that you want to discuss about Infested before we go into our closing thoughts?
I'm good, brother.
All right. So with that, we're going to close out our discussion on Infested. final thoughts. David, why don't you go ahead and take that first? Share your final thoughts with us.
Sure. You kind of alluded to it in our opening remarks, initial thoughts that, following Hera and Chopper, and you and I love them. We covered them in Rebels reactions, and of course we're now Star Wars reactions. We love those characters, and to follow them is that's a tall task. That's tough, right? I would say this, though, that for me, with only 4 episodes left, I thought they would be amping up, here after Hera and Chopper, right? To what's potentially, of course, you and I talked about this a little bit. Is this a series finale? Is this a season finale? We know we got a second season of Resistance. We know that, the Mandalorian had a, season 2 announcement for that before it was over. So it does make me question whether this will get a second season or not. And so I would think, if the series creators already know that, let's amp this thing up. Maybe they'll really be moving full tilt starting tilt starting next episode. It is unclear, but they could do another episode like this and use the last 2 episodes for the build up and ending. I'm not sure. I mean, there's things that I would like to see, like, Boba Fett's been mentioned by Tech. I'd love to see, this episode with him meeting his sister Omega, right? But who knows? Maybe we don't see him at all. I'd love for to see them finish up with Tarkin and Rampart and the Bad Batch and Omega and some character-defining moments. But I guess we'll have to wait a few more weeks. But I put a little note to myself: life is short. Let's go. I would even argue, instead of having 16 episodes, shorten it up. I mean, Loki just wrapped up last week, and that was 6 episodes. The Mandalorian's been 8 episodes each time. So for me, this, you got to use all these. I will say this, and I'll mention it again with Roland Durand. Just like you said, I'm not going to call this a filler episode, because I think one potential thing could be us seeing him come back around and help Omega and the Bad Batch, right? And that's not something new. We've seen people come back around and help Ezra, right? You and I covered that in Rebels. So I really do see that as a potential way for this to be connected as we get to these last episodes. But overall, I'd mentioned in my initial comments that my response to this episode was meh. It is, and a meh gets a grade of C, and that's my lowest grade of any episode this season.
All right, very good, very good. Well said, well said. For me, my final thoughts, are very similar to yours. As I said in my opening, I thought it was a decent story. It was very lackluster compared to the arc it just followed, with Chopper and Hera in it. It did have its high points, like we discussed, with Sid getting involved, seeing a different side of her when it comes to rescuing Omega. But it definitely was a slower episode. And like I said, I don't believe there's such thing as a filler episode in Star Wars. There's going to be this will play a part sometime down the road. We just don't know what it is yet. So when that time comes, we will see. But when it comes to the main characters of the Bad Batch, we saw very little growth. We didn't see any growth. When it comes to the overall story, what we know of the overall story and plot, we didn't see any growth. And that's hard to say, considering, like with all the other shows, we knew where the ultimate plot was running. With Clone Wars, we knew the plot was running and ending with the episode 3. We knew Rebels was running and going to be running into the rebellion, and ultimately the original trilogy. we don't know where this is ending. We don't know what the ultimate end game is. We just know they're on the run from the Empire. We don't know what the end game is. And so the fact that we have not been tied into what the ultimate goal of the series is, makes us wonder. But this did not help that speculation. Like I said, there were a few good things, a couple things that were awesome in this episode. We didn't even touch on them in our topics. Is things that normally don't get credited, and I feel bad we didn't talk about it in our talking points. Kevin Kiner and his music, he killed it again. The animation team with the animation of the episode and the lighting of the episode, it was just absolutely phenomenal, as it has been week in and week out. And these are things that we're just accustomed to with Star Wars animation, but still they are due their credit, and I apologize to them for not giving them the shout out earlier in the episode, but they were phenomenal in what they did. It was, overall, I will say this will probably go down as one of my least favorite episodes of the Bad Batch, if not the least favorite. And I was a little more generous than David with my grade. I actually gave it a C+. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. So, but we want to know what you thought of Infested. You can always hit us up on any of our social medias. We are at SW Reactions on Facebook and on Instagram, and of course SW Reactions Pod on Twitter. You can also email us show at starwarsreactions.com. All right, well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at our psychology corner. David, what have you brought to the table for us today?
All right. Well, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I was looking to see if this episode provided an opportunity to do another pivot within ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And it did in the character of Roland Durand. And so I'll tie him in at the end. But let me do, again, what I've done in the last several episodes and give a quick review of what I've covered over the last 3 podcast episodes in my Psychology Corner. First, I went over the pivots not in the order that people, the way that I teach it. I usually do pivot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 pivots total in acceptance and commitment therapy. But I started with pivot 4, which is presence or mindfulness. And I wanted that, and the several techniques involved with it, I wanted to give that first to really give our listeners a quick way to calm themselves, right? And so that's why I did pivot 4 first. And so there was 3 different techniques, mindfulness techniques that I had shared. Again, they can go back and listen to those, to that particular Psychology Corner. 2 podcast episodes ago, I went over pivot 1, and pivot 1 is diffusion, and I gave 2 diffusion techniques. One is called Leaves on a Stream and Give Your Mind a Name, and both of those I shared to help, again, our listeners get depressed, anxious, and stressful thoughts away from their minds, from our minds. And I just put a little note saying to the listeners, you just can't allow the wrong wolf to grow, right? What wolf grows, the one you feed. So we very much want to starve the one that leads to depressed, anxious, and stressful thoughts. And again, just as a quick recap, the whole thing that I'm trying to do in terms of going over all these pivots is to help our listeners with stress, depression, anxiety. And prior to going over these pivots, I had presented a lot of information on stress in America in that study done by the American Psychological Association. Again, our listeners can go back and listen to any of those podcasts and listen to the whole, order that I've presented them in, and hopefully dive in and really enjoy them. So pivot 4, pivot 1. I did pivot 3 last week, and that was on acceptance. and I explained and took the time to help our listeners understand how it decreases suffering. I gave some historical background on the pivot, including who wrote the Serenity Prayer, how AA used it in their approach to treat alcoholism, and then ultimately how Dr. Stephen Hayes incorporated it into his psychological theory and treatment approach called acceptance and commitment therapy. So I gave our listeners some background on that, and that's always kind of fun to get some of that. So there's pivots 1, 3, and 4. And in this episode, I was hoping that I could find a good way to cover ACT Pivot 2. So ultimately, our listeners will have the first 4 pivots here after these last 4 episodes. But here's what ACT Pivot 2 is. And it's called self, SELF, self. And what this pivot does when people pivot, like in the other pivots, they go from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility. Here, people are pivoting from what's called a conceptualized view of themselves to a more perspective-taking view of themselves. In other words, this pivot helps people get a more accurate view of themselves compared to a more made-up or false sense of self. And so let me explain this a little bit, give some background, and ultimately some things they can do to help have a more balanced view of self. So, Aaron, what Dr. Hayes talks about in his theory is that our history and our upbringing shape our sense of self. As soon as we come out of our mamas, our environments, our parents, peers, do we have siblings or not, boyfriends, girlfriends, all this kinds of stuff helps shape our sense of self. Now, something that he points out, again, I'm giving him credit for this because I really like what he's saying here, is that we all have this innate desire to fit in socially. We are social animals, right? We're the social primates. So because of that strong desire to fit in, it can lead to a lot of behaviors that are not on the up and up. For example, I've talked to a lot of my clients about this. We've all kind of been guilty of these. Sometimes we'll tell little white lies, right? We'll tell straight out lies, or we'll even name drop, right? I know this person, I know this person. These people are our friends. And we all have done this, and we all know people who have done this, but it's all in this effort for people to like us. To kind of add a little bit more, Aaron, in talking to thousands of people, as I've mentioned over the years, what you realize is a lot of times people don't tell that white lie or a bold-faced lie and even name drop to even purposely deceive you and me. What I've noticed is people do it more because they want people to like them, right? Not let me purposely set out to lie to Aaron, to lie to this person, so that I can get one over on them. Now, clearly, people do that. Aaron knows that. I know that. All of our listeners know that. But what I'm talking about is something that I've seen a lot. That these are people who are caring hearts. They do love people, but they'll name drop. They'll tell a little white lie. They'll embellish their story, again, because they want people to like them. Okay, so I want to make sure I shared some of that. Now, because we do that, we don't end up having this fully accurate perspective-taking sense of self. We have a more conceptualized or false sense of self. So what can we do? In the show notes, Aaron can see them, and I have them there. I have one technique that I want to go over with our listeners. And I've really enjoyed teaching this to my clients. And it's called I am not. Okay, it's a technique to help people have a more perspective-taking sense of self, accurate sense of themselves. So let me quickly run through this. There's 3 steps to it. And again, if you need to listen to it a second time, go ahead. I might talk a little quickly here, but I'll lay it out for people. What you do in this technique is you take a piece of paper, and at the top, the middle, and the bottom, you just can write the words I am. I am at the top, I am in the middle, I am at the bottom. And what I've asked my clients to do is, in the first 2, is to write down a positive psychological attribute that they have. So, for example, our listeners or Aaron or myself could write down, I am nice. And in the second one, I am helpful. But in the third one, what I would want you to do is to write down a psychological attribute that you don't like about yourself. For example, I could put down, I am selfish, or I am mean, things like that. So the first two more positive psychological attributes you like about yourself. The third one, a psychological attribute that you're not too hip on, that you struggle with. Now, the second step is to simply go to your sheet, put a comma after I am, okay, I am nice, put a comma after nice, and say, or not. Drop down to the second one. I am helpful, comma, or not. And then in the third one, we get to I am mean, comma, or not. Now, the point of that is, and it sounds very simple, but it starts to get my clients and hopefully our listeners to start to not see themselves in all or nothing terms. That is psychological rigidity, forgive me. And I've worked with clients on that for a long time, that we just see ourselves as all bad or all good, and that's just not the case. We need to have a more nuanced view of ourselves. And that's what this technique is starting to do. Now, let me go to the third part of this technique after writing down I am, and then putting the comma and saying or not, or not, or not on all three attributes. The third part of this is for our listeners to take their pencil, pen, marker, whatever, and cross off everything after I am. So you just get back to the I am, and nothing after it. Not, I am nice, or I am helpful, or I am mean. It's just three of them. And what you do is you just circle I am, all three of them. Now, this is really neat because what this says is this, is that, people, I've talked about this before over the years when Aaron and I have covered different shows like Rebels, Star Wars Resistance, and The Mandalorian, is that when we go to social gatherings, a lot of times when people don't know us, the first thing they ask us is, well, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Could you imagine if we said, I am? And that's good enough, right? And I do love this. And I've told my clients this, that by just circling the I am, they do not have to describe themselves in positive psychological attributes or negative. They are valuable themselves, their sense of self. They are beyond belief valuable because they exist. They can just say, I am. And I just think that is such a beautiful thing. And my clients have really enjoyed that. And hopefully our listeners can think about that and say, no, it's not that Aaron or David or anybody listening to this, let me give you my resume. Let me give you my, here's all my jobs and here's who I know, right? I need to name drop. I need to, impress this person. Here's what I did in high school. Here's what I did in college. Here's where I went to college, this prestigious university, or I went to Podunk U. We don't have to share any of that. Anybody that Aaron and I meet, you love them because they exist. I am, So I really like that technique. And like I said, Stephen Hayes describes it very eloquently in his book, A Liberated Mind. I encourage people to get it. It's a good read, and he can really help you with, all of these pivots. Hopefully I'm helping people as well here in a pretty quick manner. Now, I'd hinted earlier that I was going to cover Roland Durand more in the Psychology Corner, and he was the reason why I wanted to do Pivot 2, because we look at his sense of self when he starts this, right? Even Sid gives his background. His mom is this person. She's a crime lord. And of course, he's grown up with this. That's what he knows. That's his sense of self. This is me. And just like Aaron mentioned, he had this big sense of pride. And, I think about a statement that Mike Tyson had. When Mike Tyson was in his prime and I was watching him fight, I watched him knock out so many people in 20 seconds, a minute, you name it. And Mike Tyson said what all the time? everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face, and I remember they would come in and he would do an uppercut, and they had their plan on how they were going to beat Mike Tyson, and they're on the ground. And so what I think about is, again, what Aaron mentioned in terms of the pride that Roland Durand has. Hey, I've got my plan. I'm going to do this. And he gets punched right in the face by Sid in the Bad Batch by taking the spice, and now his life is on the line with the Pikes. In fact, at the end, when he gets that horn cut off, he says to Omega, it's a small price to pay. And he's right. He very well could have paid with his life. Yeah. And with pride, he got a serious dose of humble pie. And I'm hoping, in terms of him, and I mentioned it earlier, here's where you could see this character, if he changes enough, and our Bad Batchers and Omega and Sid are really in a pinch, if we see him come back around and help in some way, there would be someone going from a more conceptualized sense of self. I am an underground, I'm a thug, underground kingpin. My mom did this. I'm going to do it. And like Aaron mentioned, not only is Sid's parlor mind, but all of Ord Mantella's mind. If he switches from that to helping our heroes, there's a real switch from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility. And then, of course, that would really be one way in which this episode is not a filler. It's a development of that character. So there's the Psychology Corner, pivots 1 through 4. Again, I encourage people to go back and listen to all of them. You could even switch it around and listen to all 4, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, if people desire. But there you go, Aaron.
Very good. Very good. I love it. I always learn so much, and I loved how this one just fit perfectly with Durand. So It was well done. Well done. All right. So let's go ahead and close things up. Actually, I almost forgot. David, if somebody has questions about your Psychology Corner, where would they direct those?
Oh, definitely. No, I'm glad you asked. First and foremost is Twitter. That is never changed. It is at David_Modders, Modders. Like I said, there's an S at the end. Aaron and I have emails at our website. Mine is David at StarWarsReactions.com. And then Instagram. I'm going to, again, try to be much better at putting pictures up. I've got a lot of pictures I'd like to put up of Galaxy's Edge and stuff like that. Other Star Wars pictures. I'm going to do a better job, I promise. But that is at Instagram. If you just look up my name, David Modders, you will find it. And give me a follow, and I'll follow you back, and we'll have fun sharing Star Wars pictures and so on and so forth.
There we go. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. Let him know. Let David know what you've thought of this week's Psychology Corner, or all of them together. And if you got any questions, that's a great place to direct those questions. If you do want to talk Star Wars with me, best way to do that is on Twitter at TAHarris121079. Or, of course, you can always email me, Aaron, at StarWarsReactions.com. Now, earlier in the show, and I've said it a couple times, we have a new segment for this show. And this was actually birthed by a friend of mine, actually. My friend Sarah, sent me just a random joke. She's like, she literally sent it to me. She's like, I just heard this on the radio and I had to call and share. It's a corny Star Wars joke. And that got me thinking, there are a lot of Star Wars jokes out there. So we are starting a new segment, which we're going to do, and we're going to close out the show with it each week. And this is going to be Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. So every week after we do our pitch, we will do one corny joke before we sign off. So here is the premiere of Star Wars Dad Jokes of the week. And this is actually the joke that my friend Sarah sent me. So are you ready for this, David?
Well, I am, and I want you to know, and you and I want our listeners to know that after you give this joke or read it, and you give the punchline, you and I can hear the groans on the other end, right? It's a groaner. Dad jokes are groaners. So just know, listeners, we know you're groaning after you hear this.
Or you're laughing hysterically. Either way, it's going to be great. All right, here we go. Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. David, how did Darth Vader know what Luke got him for Christmas?
How did he know?
He felt his presence.
Oh my God, I'm gross. So bad. You would end up having a groaner, and then you start laughing because it's so bad.
That's why I loved it. She said, "You should have seen me when she sent this to me. I was in Kohl's."
Oh my gosh. I have a ton of them. I've gotten them over the years, printed them out, and stuff like that. And let's just have some fun with our clients. It'll give them some levity, and it'll be fun.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. So this was the premiere of Star Wars Dad Jokes of the Week. Let us know what you thought. Remember, you can always follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Facebook and Instagram, both at SW Reactions, Twitter, SW Reactions Pod, and of course, email show@StarWarsReactions.com. David, my friend, this has been a blast as always.
Oh man, great time. Always love recording with you, no matter how good or bad an episode is. It's always fun to talk the wars with you, and hopefully our listeners were entertained a little bit, enjoyed the joke, and learned something from the new Psychology Corner.
Absolutely. I know I did. So we appreciate everybody listening in. Thank you so much. We appreciate each and every one of you. We're thankful for you. We pray for y'all and wish y'all the best each and every week, each and every day. So have a great day. And remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@StarWarsReactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.